Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. It is good to be here this morning. Let's take a few moments to unmute so that we can hear each other give greetings.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Good to see everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Morning, everyone.
Oh, we've got people from far and away, right here in the neighborhood.
Good morning.
Morning. Hope everybody's doing okay.
We are. Hi, Sally.
Hi.
You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. There's lots of good information about things coming up, including very time-sensitive ones. So do have a look at the welcome and announcements section there before the end of of the day. And now, let us begin our service. I just wanted to thank everybody for the generous contributions. We have pledges of over $480,000 for the coming year, and that is how we create our budget, upon which we will vote next week at the annual meeting. Come along to have your voice a part of that process. So thank you so much for your commitment to this congregation, without which we could do nothing. Thank you. And now, if you have a chalice at home, please light it along with me if you like. Earth, water, fire, and air meet here. A vessel carved of the child of earth, cupped to hold water or wine, to it we bring the tiny flame. Fed by the gentle air, as birds feed their young, we too burn within, even as the waters flow through our veins. Vessels of clay, improbably drawing the blue air in and returning it, changed, like a word passed from friend to friend, like a song sung by the planet, like a cup raised to life. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from the U.S. American poet Tracy K Smith. I want to give everything away to wander forever. Here is a pot of tea. Let's share it, slowly, like sisters. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us feel ourselves arriving here fully for this time we have set aside to be together. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are."
Come, come, whoever you are, Wander, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, whoever you are. Wander, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Sharpie, I've been reading the Ramayana in comic book form.
Ah, the Ramayana, the great book from India written down by Valmiki.
I love that book. Let's act out the story of Sabala the cow.
Once upon a time, there was a queen who was so powerful that her neighbors did not dare to start wars with her. So her country lived in peace and quiet. Everyone in my country is happy, but I'm bored. Let us go with your army and tour your dominions. They marched until they came to a peaceful grove in the forest where there lived a saintly hermit named Vasishtha. People came from miles away to hear his wise sayings and to see his miraculous cow, Sabala. Please be seated on the sacred grass. How is your majesty? We are well. And you and your followers and your sacred fire? All is well in this delightful grove. You should stay with us, eat the sweet roots and berries I bring, and sit on the sacred grass and meditate. If I stay here, I'll be even more bored. You speak with words of wisdom, but really I must be going. The hermit insisted, and to be polite, the queen agreed to stay with her army and meditate. Meanwhile, the hermit went to talk with Sabala the cow. My gentle, loving friend, we owe much to the queen, who fights wars that allow us to sit here peacefully. Will you please make a feast fit for a queen, something more than roots and berries?
Of course I will.
So Sabala the cow made a feast appear with the most wonderful foods for the queen and her army. This delighted the soldiers, but not the queen. Why does such a lowly hermit get to have such a cow, but not the queen? Queens have a right to everything in their queendom, so the cow belongs to me. Since I'm so nice, I'll give you 100,000 cows for her. I would not exchange Sabala for 1,000,000 cows. But you need to live simply, and I'm just removing a temptation from you. There's no credit in virtue without temptation. So no, you can't have her. I'll give you 14,000 elephants and 10,000,000 cows. That's my final offer. And remember, queens take by force what is not given to them. That queen isn't very nice, is she? She thinks she can do whatever she wants. I wonder what the hermit will do if the queen tries to take Sabala the cow away.
I can't wait to act out the ending of the story next week.
We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or a sorrow to share this morning, please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or post them in the chat box on Zoom, and I will share them all aloud. And continuing our practice of holding in mind someone who has died from the pandemic virus, I light this candle. I light this for a married couple whose names we do not know because their obituaries have not yet been published. The announcement of their deaths was made by the health department of Cattaraugus County, New York. A woman died on Thursday from COVID-19 at the age of 70, and her husband died the next day, also from COVID-19 at the age of 76. We can only imagine the shock wave that may now be moving through their family, their neighborhood, their community of friends, and in our hearts we hold all who are grieving this double loss. It has also been a week of violence, perhaps no different than any other, but a week in which the names Dante Wright and Adam Toledo joined that of George Floyd and so many other men and boys of color for whom an encounter with the police turned fatal. A week in which an Indianapolis man whose shotgun was confiscated by the police because of the danger he posed took the rifles he was subsequently allowed to buy and killed 8 people at his former workplace. We bring our broken hearts here to our loving, beloved community so that they may become broken, open hearts, open to all who need our compassion and open to the care of others. Let us now take a few moments of silent prayer or meditation to hold all that we have heard. Blessed be. Now let's join in as Bruce leads us in singing, "There is More Love Somewhere."
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I will keep on till I find you. There is more love somewhere.
I misspoke. The wonderful singers leading us there were the By Your Side singers, with the audio engineering by Matt Rosen and the video by Bruce Olstead. Thank you, singers. Our reading is from the Reverend Carlton Pearson. In a very real way, God is a mirror of the culture that lends him a face and a name, and so is usually given a male gender and more than a bit of chauvinism. Science fiction author Robert Heinlein once wrote, "Men, humans, rarely, if ever, manage to dream up a God superior to themselves. Most gods have the manners and morals of a spoiled child." We have met the angry gods, and they are us. To this day, an emotionally infantile God remains in power, a fear-based aberration produced by fevered imaginations, promoted by those who understand how such a deity can be used to gain and consolidate power over believers, and protected by flocks of billions who refuse to question their damning God for fear of their own damnation, or out of an even greater immediate terror of social and cultural isolation. But I argue that it is precisely this image of God, an infantile, simplistic, ridiculous notion of the sublime power that underlies the world, that is destroying civil religion, fueling the rage of the angry atheist movement, and pitting science against the spiritual at a time when we should be using every tool within reach to discover what it means to be human, and divinely human at that.
أنت الرب الإله السماء والأرض مملوءة بمجدك سبحانك اللهم سبحانك اللهم جل علاك لطفا بعبدك خالقي رحمن يا كاشف البلوى يا كاشف البلوى أتيتك راجيا أرجو رضاك فليس لي إلا أدين بدين حبي
The most famous thing the Universalist minister John Murray ever said is something he didn't say. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of all people. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their theological despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. These lovely words were actually an imagining by one of his biographers, Alfred S. Cole, about the kind of thing that Murray said. Because it was true. He did seek to give people not hell, but hope and courage. Well, that's religious myth for you. A nugget of truth is wrapped up in a story that has drifted from what actually happened. Speaking of drifting, here is the founding myth of universalism in this country. John Murray was an English preacher who was saddened by many losses, ostracized for his universalist preaching, and eager to leave behind his old life and his old home. So he set out for the English colonies in North America and arrived on the shore of New Jersey 250 years ago last fall in September of 1770. To be precise, the ship got stuck on a sandbar. It wasn't going to go anywhere until they got a good, strong wind to bear them back out to sea, so he and some other passengers took a small boat to shore. They could feel solid earth beneath their feet for a while and pick up some supplies. A man named Thomas Potter saw the strangers and generously invited them to dinner, and over dinner he spoke about how he had just built a chapel on his land in the beautiful Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Unfortunately, he didn't actually have anybody lined up to preach there. Murray was not interested. He had left England to get away from all that, and in fact, he had pledged that he would never step into the pulpit again. But having learned that the man he was speaking to was a minister, Potter asked if he would preach just once that coming Sunday. Potter had just shown him such kind hospitality that it seemed stingy to refuse, but Murray doubted that he would still be around on Sunday, and he said so. If the wind was favorable, the ship would be sailing and Murray would be on it. But he said that if he were by chance still there on Sunday, he would give a sermon in Potter's chapel. Sunday came, September 30th, 1770. The wind had not changed. The ship was still stuck on the sandbar, and Murray kept his word and preached a sermon, a universalist sermon. A sermon that said that all souls would be saved. No loving God would damn us to hell, and Murray preached of a loving God. People on these shores were hungry for that message. And no wonder, hellfire was a regular topic in most churches. Imagine going to church on a Sunday, which about 3/4 of the people did, and hearing that if you didn't confess your sins, which were many, and accept the teachings of the church, you would go to hell and be punished eternally. This threat hung over the many infants and children who died. Child mortality was high then. It hung over those who were pregnant as childbirth drew near, since death in childbirth was high. That, in fact, is how John Murray had lost his son and his wife. This threat hung over anyone who had a high fever or a cut that became infected. No antibiotics in 1770. The average life expectancy was well under 40. Life was short, and people had to fear not only death, but what came after, which could be much, much worse. Murray spoke to people living this painful existence, and he brought to them the balm of universalism. God did not condemn us to eternal suffering, he promised, but would reconcile us all to himself, and so to goodness and happiness. God was not a petulant, vindictive tyrant, but a loving parent who wanted us, his children, to be happy and whole and at peace with ourselves and with each other. Murray was not the very first person to preach this hopeful word here, but he founded the first capital U Universalist church on the continent in Gloucester, Massachusetts, a few years after that first sermon in the Pine Barrens. The message of universalism spread, and at its peak, universalism was the 9th most populous religion in the United States. Then it dwindled. In seminary, I learned that it had been a victim of its own success. Other Christian churches had embraced universal salvation so thoroughly that the Universalists, as a sect, had put themselves out of a job. Good news. That was back in the 19th century. Let's see what the situation is 250 years after Murray brought his good news to these shores. I have some stats from 2015, close enough. So let's see if we can guess how many people believe in hell in our own day. Now, Tim set up a poll for me, and I think I can get it started. Now, no fair looking it up. What percentage of US Americans believe in hell? A place where people who have led bad lives and die without being sorry are eternally punished. Will you make your guess? About 15%, about 30%, about 60%, about 90%. What do you think? I'll give you another 15 seconds or so to answer. Okay, last chance to make your guess. All right. The correct answer is C. At the last research poll I'm aware of, 2015, 58% of US Americans believed in hell. Some think of it as a fiery pit, others as a state of separation from God. If one believes that God is the source of all good feeling, that state of separation must be something like a prison where you're fed and free of torture, but in which every day has a grim, gray sameness. No beauty, no joy, no love. With a strong majority of the people of our country believing that this is the fate that awaits unrepentant sinners, the only thing that seems to be keeping them from walking around in either a state of terror or zombie-like numbness to the blank horror that awaits is that very few of us believe that we personally will be sent to hell. About 2% of US Americans believe that. Is there a powerful kind of Lake Wobegon effect going on in which the vast majority of us think we are morally above average? Even so, right now in 2021, the threat of hell is still used very effectively to terrify believers, to whip up obedience, and to enlist their aid in bringing others into line. And just looking around, I think it's working. For example, you don't have to go far on the internet to find somebody advising LGBT people that they are welcome in the church, but that they had better confess their sins before it's too late. We've had members of this church whose children were clandestinely baptized by family members who feared for their souls. And some of us have fled traditions or even families that shook the threat of hell at us like a stick. And then there's the response that the Reverend Carlton Pearson, whose words we heard in the reading, got when he embraced Universalism. Reverend Pearson was born and raised in the Pentecostal church and entered its ministry. He was the minister of a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma that he had helped grow to 6,000 members when he began to preach what he called the gospel of inclusion, the reconciliation of all souls with their Creator. In 2004, his colleagues declared him guilty of heresy. All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa welcomed him and the members of his church, and they became an affiliate ministry of that congregation. You can learn much more about his journey in the documentary Come Sunday. He has never let go of the Pentecostal fervor, his passionate love for God, though he no longer thinks of God as an anthropomorphic, a person-like being, but more a power. That fervor is welded now to a universalist conviction that power embraces us and will not stop its transformative work until it has brought out the best in us, all of us. What a good fit there is between him and a church called All Souls. A quick internet search on universal salvation or universalism will reveal that many Christian theologians and preachers regard it as a pernicious doctrine. It is, quote, the opiate of the theologians, one says, warning good, hell-believing Christians against the temptation to believe that God is too loving to make us so prone to flaws and errors and then condemn us to hellfire for them. So it seems that the teaching that I received in seminary was out of date. Universalism is a very relevant theology today. Okay, so, excuse me. This is all very interesting, theological history and sociology, but what does it have to do with us? Most of us aren't trying to reconcile Pentecostalism and a loving God, though some are. Some of us believe in God, some don't, but surely few people come here haunted by the emotionally infantile God, in Pearson's words, right? Well, I have two thoughts about what this all means for us. The first is about those God-haunted, fear-hunted people. And the second is about how our universalism can help us to, in Pearson's words, discover what it means to be human and divinely human at that. Point one. We need to address the fears that bring people to our doors. We need to assure them that they can believe in God without believing in the whole package of vengefulness and punishment. And this is why we keep using God language. Because for many people, hope and courage will appear in the form of a God who loves them and will nurture them into being more loving themselves. Like Pearson, they are reckoning with a family or a community or an inner voice that tells them that God is real, and they need to know that that does not mean that a place of eternal punishment awaits them or anyone. If this is you, to you we preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. Point two. Even in a congregation and a movement where so many are atheists, humanists, religious naturalists, or some combination of these, I am not at all convinced that we have really left behind the ways of thought that created that vindictive and frightening God. As Reverend Pearson says, God is the mirror of the culture that lends him a face and a name. We humans dreamed up a God who was very much like ourselves, and not our best selves. Ourselves at moments of fear. When out of fear, we reach out to punish and control. When we leave that petulant, punishing, childish God behind, what takes its place? Looking around this country, 250 years after Murray began preaching here, we see punishment as the reflective response to most infractions, from forgetting one's homework to robbing a convenience store at gunpoint. A staggering percentage of our people in prison, more than any other country on earth. We imprison our people at more than 4 times the average global rate. Now that's a Lake Wobegon effect to make us woebegone. Homelessness, that is poverty, treated as a crime and an offense against the community. Drug addiction, treated as a crime in need of punishment, rather than a health crisis in need of supportive treatment. Peaceful protest, treated as a threat and met with escalation. How close are we really to a hope for universal reconciliation when we treat proposals such as the abolition of prisons and radical reform of law enforcement as fringe ideas? When restorative justice practices are barely on the radar, even for minor offenses. And if we are sympathetic to some criminals, our wrath seems to pour out upon others. We may counsel patience for petty thieves, but cry, "Lock 'em up," about corrupt politicians. Or we tolerate the theft of millions of dollars if the thief wears a jacket and tie, but it's 3 strikes and you're locked up for life, even if the 3 thefts add up to less than $1,000. How can we hope for universal reconciliation when even in our own ideas about creating a better community, we swing wildly between leniency and second chances on the one hand and throw away the key on the other? It seems as if we have taken God out of the judge's chair, but we haven't gotten rid of that stern chair itself. We judge, and we judge in anger and despair and defeat. We have given up on each other. We've given up on ourselves. What society would we create if we truly believed that everyone can be redeemed, no matter what crimes they've committed or harms they've caused or mistakes they've made? And if your mind goes to the toughest cases, let's just set those aside for a moment. Let's just accept that once in a great while, there is someone so incorrigible that we can't imagine anything turning them around. Okay? What about the vast rest of us? What society would we create if we had this faith in universal reconciliation, but we thought that we must be the ones to help others along that path? Because aren't we? Who else is there? Either there is no benevolent God, or there is one, and ours are that God's hands and feet and arms and voices. And we know, as a loving, patient parent God would know, as a wise teacher God would know, that people mess up. And people need help and support to become their better selves. We all do. When you envision such a land, created and nurtured by the likes of us, the holders of hope, the Universalists, what do you see? What do you see in that better world? If you can put it into a few words, post it in the chat for us all to see. And please, no arguing with each other. That could lead to some very fascinating discussions later, but just put in the chat what you envision. If we act with that hope and faith in one another. The kingdom of God, people housed instead of sleeping in tents on the street. No more hungry children, healthy ecosystems, far fewer guns. We stop fighting housing for the homeless and low-income people in our communities, hands reaching out to steady someone about to fall. We wouldn't have jails or prisons. We would have peace. What lovely visions. Oh, go ahead, keep them coming. As Reverend Pearson also writes, belief compelled through fear is not belief, it is blind and forced obedience. We could say we don't need people to believe in the principles of our country, our communities. We just want them to abide by them. Fair enough. But surely we want more than blind and forced obedience. Because as any parent or teacher knows who has tried to compel children to obey, sooner or later you are presented with a choice. They will exert their own will, and you must either reach an agreement between you or else respond so forcefully that you break their spirits. The way a harsh animal trainer uses violence and threats to force the animal to submit. Those are the choices. We are neither vicious animals nor trainers of vicious animals. We can be vicious, all right, oh yeah. But we are also beings capable of great kindness and wisdom and creativity, trying to discover what it means to be human, divinely human. That is what life and love call us to do. It takes courage to respond, and it takes hope. And we, as the inheritors of universalism, have a tool, a guide, a strong hand of help to offer to our hurting land. So may we do, and may we be blessed and bless the world. As a part of the Free Church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority. That way we remain free to govern ourselves. In addition to their annual pledges each week, our members and friends may choose to give an additional contribution as a public witness that we are and shall remain a free church. With our offering, we also assert that we are part of the interdependent web of existence. 1 week per month, your gift goes to the chosen community organization. So next week, we will take up an offering for our justice partner, Community Health Awareness Council. The order of service gives a QR code and link, and also information on using text to give via Give Lively. Thank you. Now let's join in as Bruce leads us in singing, Open My Heart.
Open my heart to all that I seek.
we all emerge from, dwell within, are transformed by, and called back to love. May your mind be humbled by this mystery. May your heart grow hopeful by it. May you be sustained by this love always. Please stay after the benediction for our virtual coffee time. You will be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay right here in the main room with me to discuss the service. You should be able to move between breakout rooms on your own. If you want to attend BJ Wyszynski's class on updating your UUCPA directory listing, look for the breakout room labeled for that purpose, and you can go there. Now, please unmute yourself, turn on your video, and we'll touch hands virtually like this while we say our benediction together.
Yeah.
Go out into the world,
All in peace.
be of good
Courage.
hold fast,
Good.
turn no one
Evil.
then the
Send the
faint.
faint-hearted,
The weak,
now suffering,
Suffering.
joys in
Rejoice in me.
Love.
Make love with world and weed. For all me.
all evil,
Amen.
hearted.
Blessed be.
Amen.